Hi, I'm Curtis with the Save Cornwall campaign. In our last video, we talked about the disparity in grant funding between land acquisition projects and recreation development projects within the Pigeon River Country State Forest. If you've not yet watched that episode, I've linked it above and highly recommend you take a look there first. To recap and summarize that video, in the 46-year history of the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund, $39 million has been awarded for land acquisition projects within the PRC, and just $390,000 has been awarded for 3 separate recreation development projects. Those 3 development projects were $254,900 in 2020 for the Pigeon River Country Discovery Center, a beautiful exhibit and must-see experience when visiting the PRC. $50,000 in 2011 for the Pigeon River Country Visitor Center renovation, and $85,000 way back in 1993 for the High Country Pathway. Now, in the same 46-year time frame, 33 land acquisition projects were awarded funding totaling $39,057,400. The 2 most recent land acquisition projects in the Pigeon River State Forest, funded at least in part by the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund, were the 2,100-acre Story Lake property, purchased in 2019 for $3.8 million, and the 400-acre Camp Pigeon property in 2021, which received $950,000 from the fund. Now, the fact of the matter is, there are other land acquisitions that have occurred in the PRC over the years that did not use money from the MNRTF. The most recent example of this is the newly acquired 600-acre Walled Lake property, purchased in 2020 for $2,019,000, using funds from the Forest Legacy Program, the Land Exchange Facilitation Fund, and a $75,000 donation from a private conservation foundation. Now, we're not going to dive into those different funds in this video, but suffice it to say, when the Michigan Department of Natural Resources wants something, they have many avenues of funding to get what they want. Tens of millions of dollars have been spent over the past decades, adding tens of thousands of acres to the Pigeon River Country. And ultimately, I think that's a good thing in and of itself. If a private landowner wants to sell their property, the state is willing to pay a fair price, and the people of Michigan gain access to land for recreational use that they would not have had before, it sounds like a big win for all parties involved. And it is. But we must consider what is being done to care for this land after it's purchased. After all, the DNR's own mission statement is a commitment to the conservation, protection, management, use, and enjoyment of the state's natural and cultural resources for current and future generations. One must admit that the application of that mission statement to the current situation at Cornwall does not exactly align. The current plans to eliminate Cornwall flooding from the map certainly do not conserve, protect, or manage it for the use and enjoyment of current and future generations. Rather, the current plan is the exact opposite of the mission statement. Now, to play devil's advocate, I suppose one could parse words and play semantics, stating that Cornwall is not a, quote, natural resource, because the dam itself is not natural. And while the dam is not natural, what it's created over the past 57 years could not be more natural. It's created home for the most diverse population of wildlife in all of the PRC, both aquatic and terrestrial. And out of all 28 bodies of water within the current borders of the PRC, Cornwall is the most accessible, yet still remote, wilderness water experience. And so, that brings us to the next planned acquisition for the PRC, the Black River Ranch property. Located adjacent to the west central edge of the state forest, this 8,760-acre property stretches across the Cheboygan and Montmorency County line and has been in the DNR's sights for literally decades. In fact, an early attempt to acquire this property was awarded $2 million from the Natural Resources Trust Fund all the way back in 1982, which happens to be the year I was born. So yeah, the DNR has wanted this property for a pretty long time. In 2021, $2.3 million was awarded from the MNRTF for this acquisition, and the full and final price tag is expected to be between $15 and $20 million, making this one of the largest PRC acquisitions in the history of the forest, both in terms of total acreage and dollars expended. This property features Silver Lake, a 150-acre spring-fed body of water that sits directly on the southern edge of the Cheboygan County line. As the crow flies, the property is just under 2.5 miles from Cornwall Creek Flooding, and it has been suggested that Silver Lake would be a good replacement for Cornwall. This raises serious concerns around management practices and conservation principles. Do we believe that a natural resource like Cornwall can outlive its usefulness? Has Cornwall's value diminished over time? When a natural resource needs financial investment to stay healthy and thrive, when it needs conservation, protection, and management for the use and enjoyment of current and future generations, do we make the investment? Or do we quite literally pull the plug, ignoring the collateral damage, and instead purchase a shiny new lake and property just a few miles away for over 10 times the price of Cornwall's repair? I would argue, along with thousands of Michiganders who have experienced Cornwall for themselves, that the value of this natural resource has not diminished over time. In fact, the opposite is true. With each passing year, its value has grown exponentially through decades of generational lessons learned and memories made by anglers, campers, hunters, kayakers, canoeists, equestrians, and adventurers of all ages. Through 57 years of wildlife habitat, evolving and thriving in and around these waters, the value has not diminished. It's only grown. And please, don't take this the wrong way. This is not an argument or campaign against the Black River Ranch acquisition. I'm all for it. But something is dreadfully wrong and broken when an appreciating asset like Cornwall can be disregarded and eliminated due to financial constraints. Yet acquisition initiatives tap into tens of millions of dollars and no one bats an eye. No one sees an issue. There's no disparity there. And yet there is good news. We can change course. We can become better. We can learn from our missteps and mishaps, and we can do the right thing. See our appreciating natural resource assets for what they actually are. Not business liabilities to be rid of, but the very resources that make our great state what it is. The resources that inspire us to live and breathe and experience the outdoors in ways that few other places on Earth can match. We can do the right thing. We can save Cornwall, and we must.